This podcast deals with issues about LGBT families and trans-specific topics. We would love to hear from you and welcome your questions and comments. However, we will not tolerate any discriminatory language or hate speech. So please, just don't do it. Enjoy the show.
I don't think I looked for people because I was like, there's what, like 5 transgender people in the world? Like, I don't know. There, 5, 15, like, how likely are you to find them? Really? I mean, and then, like, when I kind of realized this is a much bigger community than I was aware of, then it was like, oh, well, there's much more people. It's a much larger community. There's much more people to find.
Mm-hmm.
When we were kids, we met at camp.
After college, we got married.
10 years later, we finally had a baby.
That same year, I came out as trans.
This is the story of our journey.
Through marriage,
Parenting,
gender,
and all the changes that life brings.
this is Our Life in Transition. Oh God, your breath stinks, dog. Jesus. Okay. Yeah. Crunch, crunch.
People should be used to the sound of me crunching by now.
That's true. I mean, you crunched a lot last time.
I'm hungry.
I'm hungry too. That's why I just unconsciously went and started eating pickles. I didn't even realize I was doing it until I was eating the pickles already. So yeah. Anyway, shall we begin? Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome back to another delightful episode of Our Life in Transition. This is actually our final episode of season 1.
Yes, of this season.
Of this season.
Not our final episode ever. We're sticking around.
This is the end. It's over. Don't bring it up again. No, it's just the season. Don't give me weird looks. Can you just give me condescending looks? It's different.
Better than weird looks, yes?
Anyway, so, this week is Transgender Awareness Week. It is Transgender Awareness Month. And, we, figure you shall beware, and,
beware the transgender. Oh, I mean, be aware
yes,
of transgender identity.
The transgender, there's just the overarching one.
Well, yeah, if they're being aware.
There's many transgender people, but there's only one transgender.
The idea.
The idea. Yeah, well, there's a lot of people that are be wearing the idea. So today I thought we should talk a little bit about visibility and why are you breathing into the microphone?
I don't know.
And the and kind of sort of the importance of what we're doing here, what other people are doing.
We're so narcissistic. We're self-important.
It's the last episode of the season. Let's talk about us. But no, just kind of the,
Have we been doing that the whole time?
Yes, but not in such a self-aggrandizing fashion.
Huh.
So let's do that.
How Trumpian.
How dare you? You take that back. I have much better hair.
Who is the king of self-aggrandizement?
He's not the king of anything. Anyway.
This is going to be the greatest episode ever.
Yeah.
It's bigly great.
There's
never been a greater podcast.
I mean, there's that. I'll agree with that. But, there's other ways that we can discuss it without
okay.
making my skin crawl. Anyway. But
you should take a bath.
Wow. So the overarching point of kind of like this week and this month as far as awareness goes is, just trying to make a concerted effort to let people know kind of what is going on in the trans community, make people like more familiar with our experience, so that it's not as foreign to so much of the public. And I think overall it's getting better, generally speaking. I think, would you agree with that?
Getting better how? I mean,
just as far as just kind of,
what are we up to, 25?
25 transgender people?
No, 25 transgender people murdered this year.
Well, that.
I mean, getting better how?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's getting better as far as...
They got news coverage this year.
It's getting better as far as overall representation, that there is a more general conversation happening.
Well, yeah.
That, you know...
I mean, last election, they weren't, like, having LGBTQ forums for the
absolutely
candidates
not.
And stuff like that.
And it's hard sometimes because when progress happens, it happens slowly and in a frustrating fashion. And it's kind of like, you know, you want it to happen now. You want everybody to kind of understand, you know, what's going on in the trans community, understand what kind of crap we're dealing with, and everybody...
See, I think that's a far reach. I just want people to leave us the fuck alone. I mean, I don't necessarily think that, you know, people need to care what's going on in our community per se. If they could just not actively work against us.
I think once you get... I think you need to get people to care first, so that there's social pressure when somebody else is actively working against you. And I think that's starting to happen, wherein more people are aware and supportive. And in doing that, it makes it harder for people to do horrific shit to our community. Not that they don't still try, and not that they don't get away with it too.
And it's not even large horrific shit. Sometimes it's just little mini individual shitty things. Yeah,
like I mean, I think to an extent, like just taking the story, you know, on our last episode where I was talking about the thing I dealt with at work with somebody being shitty to me on the phone. You know, the fact that, you know, when I said to my boss and to my coworkers what happened, that they were like enraged about it. A few years ago, that might not have been the case. Now, I work with good people, but, you know...
Well, there's that.
I think that in more cases than there are now, people are like, well, you just got to deal with it. Not that that still doesn't happen, but I think the awareness of how wrong and messed up that is, and that's not an okay thing to do.
Yeah.
Is making it so that even small things like that, people aren't tolerating the intolerance like they used to. And I think a large part of that is that people are seeing us, and it's not, you know, just a weird thing that you see in the middle of the afternoon because you're watching Jerry Springer. And they're, you know, making some horrific spectacle of, you know, some trans women.
Right. How much do you think, like, shows like Pose and even to an extent go further back, like Orange is the New Black and like stuff like that, like how much do you think that has really been responsible for the more I want to say necessarily acceptance, but the more consciousness of...
I think you know, we don't have a monoculture like we used to, where, you know, there's 3 channels and everybody watches the same thing. But I think there is the power of media is still very strong.
I mean, even if you weren't watching Pose, you looked at it because they won a whole bunch of awards and stuff.
100%. I mean, before that show came out, just the advertising for it was everywhere. And, I mean, it made you something like, what the fuck is that? Like, there's all these sparkly people, like, and you saw the ads for it, and you're like, oh, okay, this is a bunch of trans people. And even if at the time you're like, oh, that's weird, it made you aware that it was a thing. And the fact that it was on TV was something. I think, people give, I think Caitlyn Jenner got a lot of attention when she came out, because before she transitioned, she was such a masculine hero, like a masculine sports hero. And so I think that coming out story sucked up a lot of oxygen for a minute. But I think at the same time, a lot of other people being visible in media, like Laverne Cox, like Janet Mock, just kind of went and did their own thing, and it was like, oh yeah, this is kind of like a niche little thing. I mean, not everybody watches Orange is the New Black, but it became a thing where she was on that show. She was amazing on that show. Because of that show, she started getting more work, and then you started seeing her in other places, and that kind of makes that opens the door for other people. And it's it's to the point now, like, okay, somebody goes to make a movie about trans characters, and when they're like, okay, well, we're gonna hire a cis actor or actress to dress up and play this character, and everybody loses their shit, and they're like, no, Scarlett Johansson, I'm sorry, you can't do that. Like, no, we don't need any more Jared Leto. Sorry, go play. Well, don't play the Joker again because you didn't do a good job, but go play something else. And no, let's get somebody who is living that experience.
Who has lived experience.
Yeah, to actually represent themselves. And it's not hiring cis actors to do that to a lot of people. And I'm kind of so on this. Feels like, well, that's kind of like blackface to some people. That's kind of how it reads to some people in the trans community, where it's like no, stop putting on a costume and like doing like a mockery of us because you have no idea what you're talking about, and it's.
Well, I think that's extreme. But I see where it's coming from.
It's not the same thing.
I think that might be an extreme.
But just to kind of give a sense of like the insult that it can engender. But the fact that people are more visible is making it so that when something like that comes up, people are like, really?
Mm-hmm.
That's what are you guys doing? No, that's stupid. Don't do that. And not that that's universal, because I've been on Twitter and there's a lot of assholes on there, but
which is why I stay off of Twitter.
And that's probably wise. But I have to say, I mean, even just for myself, and I've spoke on this a little bit before, I would not have probably had the confidence to come out if not for seeing those examples. Not that I'm a fan of Caitlyn Jenner, but
well, for other reasons, it has nothing to do with
other reasons,
her.
Yeah. But
transition.
Like, that was a big moment where I was like, oh, well, see that, and a lot of people, there was a little bit of backlash from a lot of people, but at the same time, many more people were like, well, good for her. That's something I wasn't really aware of before, and unfortunately, that was kind of the reference point for a lot of people. They're like, oh, like Caitlyn Jenner. I'm like, yeah-ish, but let's have a more nuanced conversation. But the fact that there was more representation before I came out made me more comfortable that I could come out and people would understand what I was talking about. If I tried to do this, because I mean, we've talked about, where I was kind of at this place of wanting to transition 10 years ago. If I tried to do that then, people would have had no idea what I was talking about and would have really kind of been standoffish in the best case scenario.
Right.
Whereas now it's like, oh yeah, that's a thing that happens. Yeah, I got another trans friend over here. Yeah, that's sure. There's a lot of trans people. That happens.
I will actually say that prior to your coming out,
mm-hmm.
I had absolutely no idea how many transgender people there are in the world.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and just because I have no experience with it, like, I know a couple people in the area,
Yes.
That, you know, but it's kind of an unspoken thing. It's just, you know.
I observe you there.
I observe you.
You've come in before you transitioned. I recognize you're the same person.
Right. I observe you. I observe that I have changed your name.
Yes.
In my, you know, computer system, you know, and that's fine. But I had absolutely no idea about the wider community. I kind of thought that this was, you know, a much smaller phenomenon than it actually is.
And it is interesting in that there are clearly other trans people around our area. We've seen them, we've interacted with them, but we don't necessarily know them. And the same goes for a lot of other people. And it's one thing to kind of understand people being transgender in an abstract, but to have actual interaction with people, right? And, you know, it be people that you know. Exactly, and that changes your perspective, in a much more tangible way, and it's the same thing with, you know, representation with just with sexual orientation over the past, you know, 30, 40 years, where, you know, especially in the 90s, people started being more aware of and accepting, in part because of media and representation in our pop culture, that there's gay people around, whatever, and that enabled more people to feel comfortable coming out, and therefore then it's like, oh, okay, well, actually no, my relative, my friend is actually gay. I actually know a gay person. And they were there all the time. You just didn't realize it because they were afraid. But then you have the people that, you know, go, well, they're gay or they're trans because of the media. Yeah, well, the media turned them. Well, you know, what did you expect? These are simple folks. The salt of the earth. You know, morons. Like, you've got people that are just going to make up their own explanation because they don't want to accept it. And well, in the same way that video games make people serial killers. I was like, where do serial killers came from? They came out of nowhere. I was like, what about serial killers? No, like, they're like, video games are, you know, corrupting the youth and making them violent, and it's not the video game. Well, if media was making us all trans, then we would be serial killers and we'd all be like Buffalo Bill, but we're not. So, because for a long time that was the representation. Buffalo Bill and was she a captain? I forget. Who was Einhorn in Ace Ventura? I forget what her rank was, but yeah. So yeah, no, we'd all be, you know, crazed killers that, you know, we're just dressing up. But no, that's not how things work. And if media was making anybody trans, then that's what it would be. But it's not, because trans people exist and have existed forever, regardless. You just haven't noticed us before. You know, and I think that the way that our culture works now it's very internet-based. So, I mean, you can have things on TV, you can have things in movies, but, like, I find a lot of time, like, the conversation continues online, for good or bad. But I think that the kind of democratic nature of social media that has kind of democratized our pop culture has made it easier for people to see diverse points of view. I know for me, like, one of the things that, you know, even 10 years ago that I first encountered that was like, oh, okay, there are other people like me, was seeing people online posting stuff about their transition. And even in the time between then, every once in a while I would see something like that and be like, oh, I mean, there's other people out there, maybe. So what you're telling me is the internet turned you trans. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the internet's very powerful. It's into everything. It's in our homes. It's in our TVs. It's in our stereos. It's in our soda machines.
Also our voting machines.
Yeah, there's that too. But, so, and I think, today, yeah.
Way to keep the Republicans home. Don't vote, it'll turn you trans. Because the interwebs will get you in the voting machine.
That'd be grand.
Somebody's going to listen to this, and that's going to end up on Breitbart. I just want you to know.
Hey, well, listen. I don't necessarily want to be a headline, especially on Breitbart. But if we do wind up on Breitbart, somewhere along the lines, that'll lead to more people coming and listening to the podcast. And that's just fine with me. I like ad revenue. So sure, go ahead. I would love to have all of you horrific Trumpers come and listen to our podcast. Knock yourselves out, please. But why do you have scissors? What the fuck?
They were sitting here.
It's all of a sudden you had sharp things. What happened?
Why are you so afraid of me having sharp things?
You're holding them ominously. You just open them very slowly and start playing with them.
I'm fidgeting.
Oh, okay. It's because you ate your snacks. Your snacks are gone.
That's right. And so is my coffee.
Oh, I'm sorry. See, now you have coffee. Now you're all fidgety, and now you've got sharp things, and I'm scared. But
she digresses.
Yeah. So today we're recording this on a Tuesday, and so as is normal, if you are a trans person on the interwebs, you might be participating in Transition Tuesday or Transformation Tuesday, depends. And I have to say, it is. Is that why you have the scissors?
No.
Oh, okay. It's not how it works, Rachel. It's not how it works.
Be cheaper.
No.
Yeah, because it's not cosmetic if it's an emergency.
If it's an emergency. Ooh, that's a... See, now there's we've documented it, so now we can't. But, I'm really scared. Where was it? Oh, Transition Tuesday. Yeah, so,
Or Transformation Tuesday.
Or Transformation Tuesday. So, even just something as small and niche as that has such an impact in that there are so many people, if you go on Instagram and type in that hashtag, participating. And I try to go out of my way to kind of share those every week because it's helped me. I know other people I've talked to have said it helps them to see people posting about their transitions, because when you're starting transitioning or you're in the middle of it, it seems very daunting and like you're never going to get there. But actually seeing somebody else who has gone ahead of you really makes you feel like, okay, this is possible. This is something that is achievable. They did it. I can do it. Okay, so what is my next step? It's going to be okay. I can get through this. And sometimes it's really hard to kind of keep that perspective, on your own. But when you are seeing other people on a similar journey, it makes you feel like it's possible.
Gotcha. Thanks again for listening to the show.
If you like what you hear so far, subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also, be sure to share with your friends and family so they can enjoy as well.
This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support.
Let me ask you this. Before...
Are you asking me or the audience?
I'm asking you.
Because they can't answer you.
I know. They could answer online in, comments.
But... Yeah, but not in real time.
Yeah, but I want to know. I want to know now. Yes.
Would kind of be a conversation ender. No, if you're like,
so,
let me ask you a question, and then I'll wait. And then next week you start it up again. That would be weird.
No, because it's the last episode. So next season,
right. Cliffhanger.
We should do that. Just like, okay, and just stop. be like The Sopranos. It just cuts out. And
No, that was a terrible ending. We
I
shouldn't
know.
do that.
I know.
Okay.
Anyway, but so I mean, what kind of representation were you aware of before I started transitioning, and was my transitioning kind of made you look for it more, or?
Okay, this is a multi-part question. I wasn't prepared for a multi-part question.
Take your time.
Or what? Because you didn't finish the question.
Yeah. Okay. So, or.
I need to know all of the multiple choice answers before I answer.
I forgot what I asked. So, I mean, were you...
And that's how I get out of answering questions.
Yeah, I know. So, were you aware as... No, okay. So, how aware were you before I started transitioning? What kind of representation did you see? And did you become more aware and seek out more information and representation after I started transitioning?
Well, I think my awareness, like, I was aware of transgender people. I was aware that they existed. I was not aware of the, as I said, of the quantity, I guess is the way to, you know, I was not aware of the prevalence of transgender people, and my misunderstanding, because they're tacked onto the end of the LGB
right
T, is that it has had somehow more to do with sexuality.
Yeah.
That it really doesn't.
Yeah, there's
necessarily. I mean, it can, but it doesn't necessarily.
A lot of people thought that when I came out. I was like, yeah, no.
So, I mean, so there were some misconceptions that I had with that. I mean, I think the people that I saw, unfortunately, you know, were Caitlyn Jenner. I mean, I knew of Laverne Cox, because we were watching Orange is the New Black. Mm-hmm. I didn't really have many other people, and there were a few people, as I said, that I knew of that were my customers and stuff like that, that I knew of. So, I mean, I knew it was a thing, but I didn't really know too much about it. I mean, obviously, once you came out, yeah, I went and did research and stuff like that, but really, I don't know that I really sought out other people.
Okay.
I think when we went to the Trans Wellness Conference for the first time, that was kind of my first realization that there were people to seek out.
Right, okay.
And also that it was a much that gender identity is a much wider spectrum.
Right.
That it's not quite as black and white as all of that you normally think of. And so after the Trans Wellness Conference, then I started looking for people and for support groups and for things like that, because then I was like, there's a lot of people around. You know, there's a lot of people to find. I mean, sure. I don't think I looked for people because I was like, there's 5 transgender people in the world? Like, I don't know. There 5, 15, like, how likely are you to find them? Really? I mean, and then, like, when I kind of realized this is a much bigger community than I was aware of, then it was like, oh, well, there's much more people. It's a much larger community. There's much more people to find, you know, and many more people that are going through the same type of thing, you know. So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it does.
I mean, and I will say, like, as far as popular culture is concerned, like, my experience of transgender was not really transgender. Like, I'm talking, like, RuPaul's Drag Race and, like,
yeah.
So, like, which people often conflate because they don't understand that there's a difference between drag and being transgender, you know, because they don't have that education, because all that's presented is drag, and it's funny. And it's meant to be entertaining, and it's ha ha ha, like, you know, and
I even think, as problematic as that show can be, as very problematic as RuPaul is, I think even that has had some positive impact in that it is a popular show, and it kind of opens people's perspective to the concept of people stepping out of their expected gender box.
But I don't know that everybody watching it is
100% no.
You know, I think that people are watching it for the spectacle of, look at them, those idiots, you know, look at the, you know,
but
look at these guys dressed up like ladies.
And I think that it opens, I think it opens people's minds a little bit to take in the information when they encounter
There's
it somewhere
exposure,
else. Right.
You know, at least, which is good.
I mean, the one thing I will say that I think is still sorely lacking, which is part of the reason we decided to do this podcast, is that there's really crappy representation as far as people in a relationship staying together, because it's
that I'm thinking of that TV show that was on for a minute.
Was that on TLC?
Yeah,
I forget what it was called.
Lost in Transition.
Yes, and there was, it was very realistic in the dealing with the issues and dealing with the struggle of wrestling with this being a thing in a relationship. I think to some extent the way it was portrayed, at least specifically in a couple
in a few of the couples,
was, okay, these two are not getting along, this isn't going well with them, so let's kind of boost
play
up the entertainment value of this battle
train
between
wreck, which is like these people's lives.
Exactly.
You know.
And that show did not get renewed.
No, which is unfortunate, because I mean it was good in that it's a subject that isn't covered.
Right.
You know. I mean, and to be fair, why not? Because even if you're just watching it for the spectacle of it, you're seeing real people.
Right.
You know, and one thing that I do think that show highlighted, as much of a train wreck as some of the couples were and everything, and there were a couple that were good, like, don't get me wrong, but it showed that how much being transgender is not a choice.
Right.
Because all of those people were struggling.
Yes.
And all of those people, if they could have lived another minute in the closet, would have done so, because none of them wanted to blow up their lives.
No, absolutely not.
You know, but it got to the point where it was basically life or death for them. And that is something that people do not understand, that is very misunderstood about the transgender community by people at large, is that people want to insist that there's a choice, that there's a you know, that this is a fad, or just an option because you want to wear pretty dresses, or like and that really did highlight the desperation, you know, and that was a good thing. I think that they just played up too much of the drama of everything falling apart. And I think the unfortunate part was, in doing that, unfortunately, in some cases, it made this very real struggle seem like a spectacle.
Right. And, to your point of people not comprehending that it's not a choice, I think a lot of people come at it from the point of view of not being able to understand wanting to be the opposite gender from what they identify as, and not necessarily coming at it from the perspective of, you know what your gender is, you know how you identify right now. If tomorrow you woke up and everybody in the world was saying, no, you're not this, you're something else, how would that make you feel? And people can't wrap their head around that, I guess, because
they can't. Well, because they can't.
No one would do that. Well,
right. They
but
can't
that's how it feels.
conceptualize a feeling that they've never had.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think it's very hard for people to a lot of the time be able to comprehend that because it's not their lived experience. And this, I mean, the same thing happens with lots of different groups. If it's not your lived experience, it's hard for you to understand. And unfortunately, for some people, that extends to they don't know how to then empathize, even if they don't understand. And that's kind of where you run into trouble. But I think that we are getting to a point where it's becoming just a common thing to have in media. Like I was, when you were just talking a second ago, I was thinking about Supergirl, and I mean that show's like super gay to begin with. There's a lot of queer characters on that show, but those CW shows
are very inclusive.
And they reach a large audience, and just having that, the couple points just with Nicole Main's character being on that show, addressing the fact that she's trans, having that be the subplot of one episode, and come up again in reference from time to time, and then just going and just moving on, and there she is, and then not like harping on it and just making like, we've acknowledged that this is a thing. This is just this. Here's just a girl who is a superhero, and every once in a while you're like, right, she's trans.
But that's not entirely forgot about that.
I know you did.
Because
you've watched the show. It's not addressed all the time.
It's not addressed all the time. I remember it.
I think that there's been a decent balance there of acknowledging it, but not making that the focus of that character, where it's like, look at how transy she is all the time, and she's just a character. But her being on that show, and people seeing that, interacting with that story, and even if they're not thinking about it all the time, having that in the back of their head, when they encounter trans people, they go, right, like that person I like on the show. And I think, and there are more trans people getting work, not enough, in Hollywood. Even like that Jennifer Lopez movie that just came out, Hustlers. Trace Lysette was one of the characters in there. She wasn't in it for very long, but she was one of the characters in that movie. And just having that be something that just comes up and is common, just like having like here's a gay character, or here is a black character, or here is any other kind of representation showing up more prevalently than it was before, is making it so that people become more accepting. It's a slow process. It's frustrating, but it's something that I'm seeing happening. And we were talking about politics, and I think the very overt lashing out, shall I say, of the current administration at the LGBT community, I think is kind of like a last desperate attempt to kind of fight against the future and the present.
I'm afraid of the future.
That was Mute One. I don't know what that was.
I don't know what that was.
But I think that it's kind of like it's a very it's a desperate kind of primal scream from people who don't like change. And I think for by and large, most people are just going, while they're not actively doing anything to fight against it, they're just going, that's stupid. We shouldn't do that. We shouldn't do that. We all agree that shouldn't do that. They're doing it, but like, it shouldn't be done, right? Yeah, no. And I think that the more mainstream point of view is that this is not okay. But anyway, next week is Transgender Day of Remembrance. I think we are up to 23 people that we know of that have been murdered in the U.S. alone this year.
Ugh.
And it's not where it needs to be. I think the public perception of trans people and transgender issues is getting better, and the fact that it's being discussed more broadly, and it's not just all of us trans people off in a corner going, a lot of us got killed, and there's other people talking about it. The fact that you had like a dozen presidential candidates talking about it and saying this is a problem is progress. So we'll see what happens from here.
This is a delightful episode to end on.
Well, you know what? I think that
I guess hopeful in a way.
It's not where it needs to be. There's still a bunch of crappy people out there, but I think things are slowly getting better. And hopefully, I think we might have helped a little. I hope we do.
You're acting like this is like the last episode ever.
No, it's just the last episode for a while.
Guys, look. It's the holidays.
Yeah.
We can't do this. And we know that if we try to do it, what's going to end up happening is that there's going to be 3 weeks without an episode, 5 weeks without an episode.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? It's just going to be a mess. So, we're taking a hiatus.
Yeah.
And when the holidays are over and January hits, we'll be back at you. But we are going to try to do some little stuff, some little bonus short little things on our Patreon, just to keep at it a little bit. So if you're on our Patreon, you'll get access to those.
If you're not on our Patreon,
why not?
Doing? You want more of this? You need to pay us. I mean, it's...
Yeah, because at the holiday season, everybody's got so much extra money.
Yeah, exactly.
But consider giving.
Yes. Give to your local trans podcast host.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or not so local.
Yeah. I'm talking to you. Yeah. You know who you are.
Okay, this just went weird. I have no idea who she's talking to, but I hope you know who you are.
Oh, they know who. I don't know who they are. They know who they are.
This is getting confusing.
That's how most of our shows end, is on a very confusing note.
Surprised you haven't gone on a radical pickle binge while we're...
I ate the pickle. I ate the pickle before we started. I'll need to find more pickles. I think there's more pickles in the fridge. I have to go look. But I also want regular dinner, so we need to get on that too. And we have to go get our child. Yeah.
Right. So, I guess what we'll just say now is, happy holidays, whatever holidays you're going to be celebrating in the next 6-8 weeks.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Christmas, Kwanzaa. Happy Festivus. Happy Yule.
Season's greetings.
Yes. That'll really piss the conservatives off.
Oh, God. The trannies got a war on Christmas now. I'm going to call Pat Robertson on you.
Oh, God.
If it snows, it's going to be all your fault. It's God's punishment.
It already snowed today.
See, it's God's punishment for
Dan-
being so fabulous.
It's their dandruff. That's what somebody said today. It's like, oh, snow is God's dandruff.
That's gross.
It is.
Okay.
I want to cut this part out. Or will I?
God, I hope so. Okay. So, thank you for joining us. We'll see you after the new year.
See you in 2020.
Which is ironic, because neither of us have 2020 vision.
I used to. Now I'm old.
That's right.
It's falling apart.
I don't even want to hear it. Okay. So, I am Rachel.
And I am Shannon.
And this has been
Our
Life in Transition.
Bye!
Thank you again for listening to Our Life in Transition.
This show is hosted by Rachel and Shannon McDill.
Our producer and editor is Shannon McDill.
Theme music is Seize the Day by Jens Kiilstofte. Check him out at jens.kiilstofte.net.
Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/olitpod. That's /OLITPOD.
Your support makes this show possible. Thank you.